I've been meaning to do a podcast for a while. I just never got around to doing it. And it's 4:00 in the afternoon right now. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start doing one now, because if I don't start one, I'm going to end up not doing one. Now, this particular podcast is unplanned, but I've got some thoughts in my head which I'm going to relay to you all. Now, I'm going to start with a bit of a sort of story. So I love Monopoly. Love playing Monopoly. I'm mega competitive. I love winning. So I have to win a Monopoly. And people I play Monopoly with, they're just as competitive as me. So they want to end up with all the properties or the cash. They want to win the game. So it makes it more fun when you're really competitive. Now, if you played Monopoly, you'll understand that you start with money from the bank. So the bank gives you money. The bank gives you money for you to begin with, and you have to go around each space and you can choose which property that you land on that you want to buy, providing you've got the right amount of money to purchase it. Now, you've got to be quite strategic with Monopoly, because you don't want to end up with no money. Because if you end up with no money and you land on another person's property and you can't afford to pay them, you can end up losing your properties, etc. Now, when you win the game of Monopoly, you win thinking that you are the richest person on that game. When you look at the game of Monopoly, when you start the game, you need a banker. If all of you want to play Monopoly, one of you has to choose to be the banker. And usually people might argue about who's the banker. But what you do know is everyone watches the banker. They want to watch the banker to see what the banker is doing with that cash. They keep an eye on him or her. Now, why do they keep an eye on the banker? Well, it's because the banker has access to large sums of money. More money than anyone on that table. So they keep an eye on that banker just to make sure the banker isn't taking bits of money for him or herself. Now, to win the game of Monopoly, you pretty much have to put your opponents in a situation where they're bankrupt. They can't afford to pay you, they have no properties, etc. So you're the richest person on that game. So you believe. You're the winner of that game. So you believe. But are you actually the winner of this game? Are you actually the richest person in this game? Take the time to think about it. During the game, when things go wrong, you have to pay fines, etc. You end up paying your other players or the bank. In certain circumstances, you can end up giving properties over to the bank. The bank doesn't even play the game. But the bank, when you take your time to look at it, has substantially more money than you have. If the bank wanted to get involved in the game with all the money that the bank has, there's only ever going to be one winner. And it's not going to be any of the players of the game. Now, in Monopoly, you see that you have a certain amount of money in the game. Imagine if the bank had an unlimited amount of funds. So there's no limit to the amount of funds that the bank can generate. Imagine that was the case. With this unlimited amount of money, if the bank wants to get involved, you have zero hope of ever winning. You will never be the richest person in this game. Now let's transfer this over to the game of life, the day-to-day. People will look at someone like Jeff Bezos and say he's the richest man in the world. That's what they'll say. He has 190 billion or whatever amount it is. They'll say he's the richest person in the world. But is he though? When the Federal Reserve can, in an instant, by the way, the Federal Reserve is a central bank in the United States. When the Federal Reserve in the US can instantly put 1 trillion, 2 trillion into a system in seconds. Do you think Jeff Bezos is the richest person in the world? Look at the difference as to what Jeff Bezos has to do in order to believe he's the richest person in the world. He has to create an organization. He has to employ people. He has to market across the world. He has to do an immense amount of things in order for him to generate or be worth 190 billion. The game of Monopoly is a perfect example of how the world works. The bank, or the central bank, shall we say, will always win. The central bank will always win because they create the money. If you want to be the richest person in the world, you need to be the person creating the money. That's the truth. You have to be the person who is putting in those figures into the system to be the richest person in the world. Anyone else who claims to be the richest person in the world is deluded. How can they have the most amount of money when there is someone out there who can press buttons and create it? So now let's look at that. Let's look at that a bit closely. If you're the person creating the money, you can pretty much buy anything that you want in the world. Pretty much everything in this world costs money. So if you're able to create the money, you don't need to do anything. You can just press buttons and create it. You can turn on your printer and print it. That means you're getting everything for free. It means your whole life is free because everyone else is doing the work for you. Countries are pretty much built on the fact that someone receives money for whatever they do. If you want a building built, you're going to have to pay someone. If you want technology in your country to advance, you are going to have to pay someone to do whatever it takes to research it, to create it, in order for your country to improve in terms of technology. You're going to have to pay people for pretty much everything that you need doing in your country. How easy is it for you to do this if your job is just to put figures on the computer into a system? You are getting everything for free. Your whole life is free. Everyone else is controlled by you because they require what you give them. Now, if you look at the United Kingdom, I'm going to come on to the US in a bit. The United Kingdom, when they went into Europe, they made sure they retained their currency. They made sure of it. They were not going to allow the pound sterling to go and be replaced by the euro. They were never going to do that. Why would they not want to do that? They will lose control over the people that they have control of. Remember, the person creating the money is the person that's in control. So what the UK would not want to do is to have someone else controlling the money. They don't want to be part of a whole group where everyone knows what everyone is doing in terms of how much money is being created. They don't want that. They lose a massive advantage by that happening. The UK wants to be able to tell you that they have no money. So therefore, they need to take money from you, even though they create it out of thin air. They type digits into a computer. All you know is you have to go out and find a way to earn that money. The money that is typed into a computer and put into a system. Now, the people controlling the creation of that money, they're never going to have that problem that you have. They will never, ever have to have that issue that you have. You might sit there and say to me that, yeah, well, you have to take into account these economic factors as to how much money they can put into the system because it will devalue the pound, etc., etc. So therefore, they wouldn't just go ahead and try to start creating money for themselves that you don't know about, that they can do whatever they want. Let me take you back to Monopoly and the banker. Look at all the money the banker is in charge of. But the banker is playing the game. The banker is one of the players of this game. Are you willing to bet your life that there is going to be no player of Monopoly who's a banker in the world that wouldn't just take money for themselves if they could do, if no one could ever find out? Are you willing to bet your life on that? Are you willing to trust the people who are not transparent? They are not transparent as to what is actually going on within the system. They feed you the information that they want to feed you. So are you willing to put your life and your trust in these types of people? That's what I've got to ask you. Now, let's sit on the topic of currencies. Now, currencies is such an interesting topic. It's such an interesting topic purely because of the fact of what it represents. I'm going to give you a scenario. When you look at drug dealers, I'm talking mega cartel drug dealers. Let's say Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar wanted control, total control over the drug movement in Colombia. So if you're a rival cartel, you would be at risk of getting completely obliterated, killed, murdered. You could not do drug deals on Pablo Escobar's patch. You could never do that. You would get killed. That's what would happen to you. He wanted full control over the whole drug movement. If he has control of it, he sets everything. He sets the price. Everyone has to come to him, and he ends up profiting massively. It is a complete monopoly. Now let's move this over to currencies and money. Now let's say you live in a village in the UK and there's about 5,000 people in your village and you decide you want to use your own currency, create your own money to be used in this village. So people all work with this currency. Whoever creates it will be arrested for fraud. There's a reason why people are arrested for what they call fake currency. The reason why they're arrested for fake currency is because it needs to be a monopoly. It needs to be a complete monopoly. The UK, as an example, cannot have anyone else using any form of currency other than their own. There's a reason why Indian rupees are not used as a currency in the UK. There's several currencies across the world because the UK wants complete monopoly over all the currency in that country. You can't allow anyone else to try and control any of your area. You need full control over your people. They need to be working under your rules and your rules alone. A village of 5,000 people can easily create their own currency. They can easily live together if they have all the skills that they require and create their own currency and utilize that currency to do business with each other. Easily. They don't require a central bank to do that. But if that village doesn't require pound notes, the control over that village is lost. They cannot have their own system in place. Not on your patch. How are you going to benefit from anything they're doing if they don't require you? How are you going to benefit? How are you going to tax them? How are you going to fine them when they don't require your money? How are you going to get them into debt if they don't require your money? That has to be stamped out early on and brutally. People need to be put in prison for that. That's what will happen. Because the main reason why there is only one currency in the UK is because you have control over all the people. They all work and believe in this currency, so therefore they are controlled by what you give them. You give them as a central bank of the country, as the government. But you know what it is? Some people don't like to just stop at where they are. They like to expand, which is why, for example, the US wants their currency to be the most powerful currency in the world. They only like to deal with their own currency. When they go to all random countries across the world, they won't accept their currency. They have to deal in US dollars. If you go to different countries, if you say developing countries, etc., you will start to notice that they will accept US dollars, and US dollars is their preferred form of currency. Because that means if they are using the US currency, the US dollar, it means the US can get anything they want done in these countries for free because they are creating the money that the country is using. Everything is about control. Money is about control. If you want to be the richest person in the world, you have to be the person that creates the money. That's the position you have to be. You have to be the person that creates the money. Like I said to you before, anyone else who does not create the money and thinks they're the richest person in the world is deluded. Because it takes that person who creates the money 2 seconds to create 10 trillion. And suddenly, if you're Jeff Bezos and you have 190 billion, your money looks like peanuts. Why am I telling you all this? Why am I saying this? It's because it's important for people to have the realization of what money is. If they want to spend their whole life, become multi-millionaires, etc., at least understand that you are never going to be the level of the people creating it. You're going to be under them. You're going to be a worker for them. If you cannot beat these people, which you can't, you find a way to utilize their methods to your advantage, which is why I only create income streams that has a way of generating me passive income in terms of money that I have to make no effort to make, which is why I invest in property, which is why I invest in the stock market, which is why I create income streams in order for it to be generating me money while I'm doing absolutely nothing, because that's my sanity. In a world where I'm put in a situation where people only follow and accept money in exchange for whatever I want, I have no choice but to utilize currency. But one thing I'll tell you is I am not going to spend my life breaking my back for something that I know someone is creating for absolutely nothing. But you know what? And what you have to understand is it doesn't matter how many years go by, how many decades, even me giving this message out in this podcast, there are always going to be people who are going to sit there spending their whole life working for money. Now, for a system like this to work, it requires people who believe in the system. If people don't believe in the system will collapse. And because there is so many people, i.e. the vast majority of people who believe in the system, it means there is a segment of people who don't need to do the work. The people who are smart enough would generate money without doing any work. So what you have to decide yourself is whether you want to be the person who's part of the system being controlled, or whether you want to be the part of the system that understands the system and knows that it's a system that is not going to go away, but are going to take advantage of the system by being the person who doesn't do the work. Are you going to be the person who wastes money on nonsense like expensive cars, overpriced clothing, overpriced jewelry? Are you going to be that person? You have to decide whether you want to be that person or whether you want to be the person who is not doing the work. That's what you have to think about. So every day that you're going to work, every day that you're spending, breaking your back to do something, you have to remember there is someone there who does not do anything and does not need to do anything because you are doing it. Just let that sit with you. And how does that make you feel? When I constantly talk on my YouTube channel about the importance of understanding how money works, how to understand how the system works in terms of money, debt, etc. When I constantly go on about that, I'm doing it for this specific reason. In my mind, I'm not settled with the fact that I know someone is doing absolutely nothing and is basically taking advantage of me if I'm working myself to death every single day. You'll now start to understand why I always talk about debt as in being something that's such light work, something that is not for people to be stressing their life about, getting into depression, trying to kill themselves over. All of this is created so easily by someone who wants something for free. All of it is created so easily. So for me, my only interest in terms of debt is to how I use it for my advantage, which is why I always say, put as little as you can down on a property. Let the bank take most of the responsibility. If you're going to have loads of property, don't sit there and be that person who wants to sit there and go, oh, I have to pay off my mortgage. I've got to pay it all off as much as I can, as quickly as I can. Or I want to put down a 50% deposit so I have a less to worry about. No. While the greedy bank is there, you use them. You use them to get as many properties as you can while using as little money as you can. You do this in a way so you're not ever having to pay any mortgages. You rent the properties out. You rent them out to the people who are part of a system who believe that they need to spend their life working. Because while they're working and paying your mortgage off and you are getting a profit over all your properties, you are not working. You are not buying into the system of working for the rest of your life. You are not being a slave to the person who's getting everything for nothing. I see a lot of people on social media, and let's say they've just bought a new car. Let's say it's a Porsche or whatever, brand new Porsche, and they're showing it off, putting it on their social media. And I see people saying, "Congratulations, bro," or "Well done. You've done amazing. You should be proud." I sit there and I have to scratch my head and go, has everyone lost their mind? Two things has happened here. Either this person has acquired a hefty amount of finance, which means they don't own the car. They're fully in debt. So they have gone and got debt for something that depreciates. So they are fully signed up member into the system where they are working for the person who's getting something for free. Or number two, they have paid cash for this piece of tin, which, by the way, is more unlikely than likely. So whichever of the two things that it is, I automatically can see from that person that you are very much ingrained into a system. You're a consumer of this system. You're a person who the system requires to exist. It is about time that people stop praising and looking up to this type of person. It is just incredible. It is incredible that we live in a society where the more money that you are spending on absolute nonsense and the fact that you are having to continually work in order to pay for nonsense, you get praised for it. You get praised for doing that. If you're smart and you only put your money into something that generated income, which meant that you did not need to work, you would be no good to the system. You're a person that the system does not want too much of. That type of person, you're that person. When people meet each other, you'll see one of the questions that come up is, what do you do? They want to know what you're doing, and they rate you by the type of work that you are doing, how high your position is. The person who says, I don't do anything, they'll be looked at like, what do you mean you don't do anything? What, you're unemployed? No, I just don't do anything because I don't need to do anything. I set my life that way. I remember when someone asked me what I did, and I said, I don't really do anything. I create YouTube videos, but other than that, I don't really do anything because I don't like to get into detail as to what I do, because I don't like to sit there and just start talking about everything that I do because a person asked when I don't know that person. So the person responded, he went, ha ha ha. So what? Are you just a house husband? Yes, yeah, of course. I'm a house husband because I don't do anything. You didn't ask me why I don't do anything. Because if I told you why I don't do anything, it's because I've made sure that I've invested in certain ways, meaning that people like you have to do something in order to pay me. That's how I positioned my life. So while that person is making a joke and laughing and assuming, oh, you're a house husband, what this guy doesn't realize is if he sat and had a proper conversation with me, I would tell him ways so he doesn't have to be sitting there getting up every single day, putting his suit on to be working 5 days a week or 6 days a week. But you know what I did? I left him. Yeah, house husband. Yeah, house husband. Good on you. 5 days a week. Enjoy yourself. Because sometimes you just have to do that to people. Because if I sat there and I had to educate every single person, the system's not going to work. Because it means I have to start working because other people have decided to do the same thing that I've done, to position themselves in a way where they don't have to work because other people are working to pay them. You can't have too many of these people. The system requires that type of person who's going to laugh at me and say, haha, you're a house husband, without knowing or understanding that I have investments so well placed that I don't even need to work, that I don't need to be paying mortgages. The system requires that. So I need to let him continue on his path. So next time, if you have an opportunity, you're speaking to someone, you're saying to them, what do you do? And that person says, oh, I don't do anything. Find out why they don't do anything first. Find out why they don't do anything before you act like this particular guy and go, ha ha ha, you're a house husband. Because you might be surprised. Like I said, this podcast was not planned. I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do a podcast. I do hope you guys have enjoyed it. And I do really hope that you can take things from this that will help better your life. If you've enjoyed this podcast, do let me know. And if you want to see me do more podcasts like this, also do let me know. I will do it if you guys enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, you don't like it, I will just won't do podcasts. So do let me know. Anyway, I'll probably catch you on one of my videos. Take care, everyone.